first time. I'm actually here after we published the second game we created. But I think I should start by maybe showing projects we've done, because I think the easiest way to sort of introduce yourself to the people who are going to listen to you is to show you your games. I think that's the easiest way to go. So, who are we? As Monsieur said, we're the developers who made both these titles. These are Zeno Clash was our debut game. It's a first-person fighting sort of hybrid with sort of a combat game in a surreal punk fantasy world. And Rock of Ages is a kind of Marvel Madness meets tower defense sort of game, which is completely different but maybe equally as bizarre. I'll show you some screenshots. This is Zeno Clash, one of the screenshots of Zeno Clash. As you can see, it's a first-person game, pretty colorful, bizarre in its style. And this is Rock of Ages. It's both very specially in the art side. We have a lot of development on the art percent, something I'm going to talk about a little bit further along in this speech, because it's something really important to the success of our studio. I think I'm going to show a couple of trailers for those who don't know the game. Actually, how many people here know either of both titles? It's good. For the rest of you, I'll show a preview of these titles. I'm not very good with this. This is an early video of Zeno Clash. It's not the final version, but gameplay trailers we showed for Zeno Clash when we were developing it many years ago. And if I can go down here, where's the... whoops. I'm not very Windows 7, where is the video of Rock of Ages. Apparently there's no... Yes? No. get back to the presentation. So, Zeno Clash, Rock of Ages. So, what did we achieve with these titles? Zeno Clash got a lot of awards actually. We were chosen as the Independent PC Game of the Year in 2009 by PC Gamer. Zeno Clash also made it to the magazine in issue in February when they do the top 100 games of the history of PC. They chose us number 65 on top of Crisis, on top of I think StarCraft. Really bizarre. For us it was absolutely impossible to believe. We were nominated for the Independent Game Festival in Excellence in Visual Arts and the Game Developer Choice Awards. We were Best Debut Studio. We had a nomination. And for Rock of Ages, the prize below, which was just recently launched this past year, we were chosen the most original game of the year by the Insider Game Awards. That's from Machinima, competing against titles like Ellen or Catherine and some other pretty big titles. Now, big question many people really come and ask us is where did we start and how did we achieve the level we achieved? Because currently, as a studio, we're working with publishers, we're working on titles with the Unreal Engine. Zeno Clash was published with the Source Engine. We've gotten a pretty big level of exposure internationally, and the truth is that we started really small. We weren't a very big studio. We were actually a group of brothers. The name ACE TEAM comes from Andres, Carlos, and Edmundo. That's three brothers who started like a mod development scene. And at the beginning it was just the three of us making some really retro games, making modifications of games and having a bit of fun. And as you can see there, the very first games that we produced were, this one was for Mac Plus. We never even finished it. It was a game when the computer, actually we drew the graphics of that game when computers only had two colors, black and white. Then we made a mod of Batman Doom, based on the Doom Dog, on top of the Doom 2 engine. Then we made a first-person total conversion, the Dark Conjunction, which was based on the Quake 3 Arena engine. Now, the important thing to say about this process, rather than say, oh, you know what, we made a lot of mods, is to maybe see the significance and the importance of having worked on mods even before starting our professional games. Mods are a very powerful entry point into the industry today, and they were before also. By making mods, you are using the same tools that game developers, real tools, and product game developers use to produce their own games. So by modifying a game, if say you're a level designer and you choose to grab an editing tool from a specific game and you make your own levels, you're basically using the same tool the game developer used to make that same game. Let's say you're using Source Engine and you're using Hammer, which is the level editor. That means you're going to be using the same level editor that the person involved did to make the levels from Half-Life 2. That's really powerful. That really gives you a lot of experience. No single education you can buy will give you the experience of working on a full-time mod project. If you want to get into video games, at least at this point, I wouldn't say they can teach you the 3D art, they can teach you the programming, but the whole process of uniting a team, gathering this team, coordinating, make different parts of making a video game is extremely powerful when you get into mods. And if you think of it, many successful games that started out as mods. Counter-Strike, even Left 4 Dead was a Counter-Strike mod. It was a Counter-Strike experiment. But I'm sure there's many more examples. But if you're well known in video games, you will know that many mods end up being successful video game products. say with respect to having worked on mods. The other thing is the relevance of scaling up the team. When we started doing the first games, it was just the three brothers. The three of us have a rather artistic background, more as designers rather than engineers. And as we scaled up our projects, moving from basic pixelated graphics into 3D and other more complicated projects, it meant that we needed people who would program the games for us because we didn't have the background. The three of us were more specialized in the art part and level design and other aspects. So it was important to grow, and that meant that we had to find other people. One of the biggest problems with starting a game company, I would say it's not the money. I wouldn't say that it's necessarily having an idea or getting the knowledge. The big problem you're going to have if you want to make games is that you can be a very talented programmer, or you can be a very talented artist, or sound designer, or whatever, or game designer, but if you cannot find other people from different specialties to help you out in your own project, and that you work as a team, there's no way you're going to get it done. Many people have the dream of making games, but they suddenly have the idea that they can do everything by themselves. And the truth is that at this point, this industry is too multidisciplinary, much more than many other industries. We're talking about, if you compare video games with making movies, you need even more different type of people. We're talking about, in the movies, maybe you have the cameraman, and you have actors, you have the director, but it's all pretty much art. In video games, you're not doing only art or design, you're also doing software, which means you have to get a group of engineers to collaborate with artists, and that mix tends to be rather difficult. It isn't easy. So gathering a team is also important. When you start with smaller projects, you might be able to pull them off with a rather small team. The only way to grow rather larger projects is by working on by growing your team and working on something else. So let's talk a little bit about AAA production values for titles produced in Latin America, and trying to produce really high quality work from a place like here. You'll notice that I put AAA between quotation marks, and the reason I say it is because I'm not going to lie to myself, I'm not going to lie, we're very far from reaching the levels that you can see in the Resident Evil games with Capcom or Halo with Bungie or anything. We're not at that level, and we don't pretend to be. We're trying to compete at a different segment of the industry. I'll talk a little bit about this digital distribution later, and you'll see the importance and the relevance of how digital distribution allows us to produce games that are pretty high quality standards, but that you don't have to enter this realm where game production values are so high that we're talking about multi-million projects, multi-million-dollar projects, which is almost impossible for a startup studio. If I have to tell you how much money we spent on the first Zeno Clash, I would easily guess that it's the money that they use for cafeteria in most of the big companies for the duration of our project. I mean, we really started from a low entry point. And the reason we were able to pretty much pull off a rather good-looking title that looked contemporary was because of many design decisions that I'm going to talk a little bit about. And the other reason is because we license technology. Now, licensing technology, what does that mean? We were using the source engine, the same engine that Valve used for Half-Life. So, did we really license their technology, or did we make a mod? The truth is, we made a private mod. What does that mean? We made a game using their tools, using their... Everything was free. We didn't have to pay anything to get the first demo of Zeno Clash done. showed it to Valve, they liked it, and then they gave us the license. That's how it goes. And I would say that that's how it goes for independent developers everywhere in the world. Unless they're doing something rather like 2D or something which they have a team which can maybe create an engine which allows them to produce a game. If they're going to go with 3D, making a 3D engine that's competitive to today's standards is very, very complicated. And now the possibilities have opened incredibly as with the rise of UDK and many more tools like, for instance, Unity. There's a lot of opportunities to start doing some really, really complex games with some really, really professional engines. So the term to talk about AAA production values is that if you work on a title and you keep it simple and you're capable of not going wild or crazy with the scope of the project, you can probably come up with a demo or a structure which will allow you to make a game that at least looks pretty good compared to today's standards. Obviously, you won't be competing against Battlefield 3 or the best looking, best graphic games. Of course not. We're talking about small teams that have limited resources and limited time and limited, much smaller teams. But you can actually do something that looks pretty good. And it's a great example, if anyone has seen it, I'm sure many of you have, is the Hawken demo of this Mech Warrior sort of game that's been done in UDK, which looks absolutely stunning. Now I'm going to talk a bit about direction, why the success of ACE Team and why we were able to relatively enter a very competitive area of the video game industry with a very complicated project. If I were to think the most difficult genre of games with which you would have to possibly compete to go into the industry, maybe first-person shooters would be one of the most difficult. Technologically speaking, they are one of the most complex. Graphically speaking, they are also tend to be extremely complex. So why would an indie game studio want to make a first-person game? And I'm not saying that it's the way to go. Obviously, anyone can choose whatever they want and they can start a project. But how did we succeed where it almost felt at the time impossible to have any sort of success? And the key, the secret to what ACE Team we did very well was differentiate. Is that we were different. We didn't make something that was similar to what you would find in the industry. When we had an early demo of Zeno Clash and we started pitching it to publishers, we got many different answers, and I always remember one of the, I think it was Eidos, I'm not so sure, but one of the publishers came back to us and said, this is really impressive work, but only your peers, your colleagues in the industry will be able to understand this or appreciate it. The common people, they will not understand. It is too bizarre. And they rejected us. In our opinion, when we got this answer, we were getting the best, worst answer we could possibly have hoped for. Why? Because they were telling us, you are too different for us to understand. Now, in essence, they were right. We didn't sell millions of copies of Zeno Clash. We did pretty well, but we didn't sell millions. It did go. It's not a big mainstream title. It rather is. It's still niche by comparison to most first-person games. But niche today allows you an entry point in the industry, and since digital games don't need the same budgets that that maybe the bigger games that you need, you can create a game that will start at a $20 price point, maybe $10 price point, and that does give you opportunities to compete in a different market. So just because people might not understand your project doesn't necessarily mean that you're in a bad direction. And to speak a little bit about what we were pitching for Zeno Clash, it was the story of a man who has a hermaphrodite parent, both man and woman, which is a huge evil bird thing that has this mutant family, and he has a story surrounding this cast of characters. Like, it's pretty far out there. I mean, it's not something really common. It's different, and the publishers were scared about it. They didn't know, and the truth is that the first project we funded it almost entirely alone. Almost entirely. Some Russian publishers helped us out, but much closer nearing the end. What I'm trying to say is different is good. Being unique today is actually a very powerful tool in the industry, because being a niche title can give you the opportunity to start out and do something that will give you the chance to grow. For the first Zeno Clash that we made, we just simply gathered savings from the founders of the studio. We worked at a very humble place. We worked actually in my apartment. We set up a lot of computers in the living room. We did everything like very indie. But as the game got published, and as people saw, as the publishers saw that we were successful in selling the game, we got access to develop a second version of Zeno Clash for Xbox Live Arcade. So that gave us the opportunity to work with Xbox development kits. I think we were one of the first studios in all Latin America that had console development kits. Now we're working with PlayStation, now we're working with the Unreal Engine, now we have an established publisher. It's a road. You have to start from somewhere. And just because you're doing something that people don't understand at the beginning doesn't mean that you're not maybe doing it right. Now, I really love this slide. I think most of you will probably be able to say which 6 games those are, because you're video game fans, you know these games. You're going to say this one is Call of Duty, this is Battlefield, this is Day of Defeat, or I don't know which one. But the truth is that for a casual player, really doesn't, maybe not even a casual player, but a normal person, for a normal person, all these games are the same game. I have nothing against them. I'm not criticizing the fact that they exist, but all these games are made with millions of dollars. They have huge teams behind them. So what would have happened if we would have tried to do a war-themed first-person shooter? We would have done a mediocre war first-person I mean, there's no way you're going to make anything like Call of Duty or Battlefield if you're starting out in this industry. And actually, I wouldn't recommend it anyway, unless you have a really, maybe you have an idea for a war game, but it has to have something that's completely different what the other people are offering. And for us, at least from a visual standpoint, the game had to be absolutely different. We couldn't simply make a game that had a brown color palette and that it would get mixed up. From a PR, from trying to advertise a game, it would have been a nightmare to stand out on top of other photorealistic games if we would have done something like that. This may not be completely accurate, but it's to give you a sensation. Like most first-person titles are based on war and firearms. Then you would have a pretty big chunk which are war and science fiction, and none of the above, rather few. You could call those maybe the ones that innovate the most. The thing is, I'm only setting a case for first-person shooters, which doesn't mean, again, you have to do a first-person shooter. You could try to apply the same logic behind adventure games or whatever genre you prefer. The thing is, study look around what is in the market and see what you can do that's original, that's different, that people haven't seen. And it's important to have a different direction visually, because mechanics on their own, it's difficult to convey the idea. My game is played different than these other games, but it looks the same. So let's go to digital distribution. Why the rise of the indie gaming scene as we see it today? I could not possibly imagine a more powerful indie game scene than the one that we see today. Many indie game developers are actually these days much more successful than AAA game studios. I don't think Notch, the guy behind Minecraft, has anything. I don't think he's very unhappy about the performance of his game, and I would easily say that Minecraft probably outsells many million-dollar production value big AAA titles done by maybe Capcom, Konami, or I don't know, but it's possible. And you get people from Tootie Boy from World of Goo, you get Jonathan Blow from Raid, you've got people from many different indie game developers doing a very powerful job in the industry. The only reason they're capable of doing this today, and they weren't capable of doing it before, is because now we have digital distribution. Without it, there's no way in the industry, because getting to the retail line is very complicated, and publishers in general, they're afraid of putting a non-successful, something that doesn't have the guaranteed success. It's kind of hard for them to try to think about retail. So, digital Steam is magical. I really recommend publishing in Steam whenever possible, but it might be a bit hard to